welcome to episode 4 of WordPress Publisher Sessions, where we talk about publishing success. And we have Louis Nicholls here from Sparkloop. And Louis' expertise is in growing newsletters through referrals, which I find super interesting and can't wait to talk about. Personally speaking, I know, although we don't directly work with newsletters as a subscription system, we kind of depend on them because newsletters is such a driver of eyeballs, from readers' inboxes to publishers' content on their website. So I think anything that we can learn about growing the newsletter will have a pretty big impact for any publisher that's listening to this stream. So, hey, Louis, welcome. Thank you for taking time and being with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pete. I'm really excited to be here.
Cool. So why don't we just kick off? Can you, you're in the newsletter referral business, growing newsletters. Can you tell us a little bit about really two things? A little bit about yourself and how you got here, and then we'd love to hear more about what that actually is, what Sparkloop is and does.
Definitely. So I got into the newsletter space, I think probably about 4 years ago. And it started off completely by accident when I'd sold a previous software business and I was doing what people tend to do when they've done that, which is being very lazy for a couple of months and doing nothing, and then getting very energetic and having all this pent-up energy and starting to just do some consulting and helping friends out on the side, just to feel like you have some sort of purpose in life, basically. And what happened was I started working with a friend of mine who was working on a very large flight deals newsletter, so giving you all kinds of updates on cheap flights and exciting flights to different places, which was still a big thing, but it was a really big thing a couple of years ago. And he wanted to do a referral program inside his newsletter. He wanted to say, well, surely this should be a thing. You should be able to give each of your existing subscribers a link, tell them to share with friends, and say, hey, if you do share with friends, we'll track it, we'll let you know, and we'll give you something to say thank you. And he said, this must be easy. Loads of people must be doing this. Can you help me figure out the best way to do it? So I took a look and I asked some friends who ran similar software businesses, and they all said, unfortunately, there isn't any easy way to do this, but hang on, this is interesting. This is like the third or fourth time this week that somebody's asked me about this. We should probably take a look. So that's where we started, just testing it out. And then from there, we've grown into, we work with thousands of publishers on referral programs, helping them grow by millions of subscribers each month. And we've branched out from referral programs into all different kinds of newsletter growth tools. And it's a really, really exciting job because we get to work with creators, we get to work with, celebrities and personalities. We get to work with just really interesting authors and people who like to write their own newsletters, and really big media brands and publishers who, are household names and reaching millions of inboxes every day. So it's really exciting, and it's nice to be able to help them grow.
That's awesome. So can you give me an example of a referral benefit? And maybe it'd be cool to get a sense of what that actually looks like in a newsletter.
Yeah, definitely. So I imagine that if people read newsletters, by now they will probably have seen a referral program in action before, I hope. And if you have seen one, there's like a 90-something% chance that it's powered by us behind the scenes. So that's nice to know. I think the classic kind of reward that you'll see is you'll be looking through the newsletter, and normally somewhere at the bottom you'll see a looping GIF with some images of different things that you could win, and it will say something like refer and get rewards. And normally there'll be a little link that you can share to the newsletter, or maybe a button you can click on to share on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, or to forward the email. And when you share that with a friend, you'll get referral points, and then rewards. That's a whole, I could spend hours talking about this. I find it very interesting. It's not that interesting, but I find it very interesting because it's all I do every day. But basically we're thinking of things, maybe with like an average sort of newsletter, we might be thinking about stickers, we might be thinking about branded t-shirts, mugs, sweatshirts, all that kind of thing. Or we might be thinking about coupon codes. We might be thinking digital content, entries into giveaways to win iPhones, holidays, things like that. The list really goes on. It just depends on, obviously, what your audience would be motivated by, really.
So if, like, on my side, just speaking for us, publisher that's selling digital subscriptions could give away digital subscriptions to like free registered readers, as an example, or just newsletter readers. Like, okay, refer this and get a chance to win, or I don't know, refer X number of times and get a subscription, or I don't know, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up with the paid subscription side of things, because what you tend to find, which is really interesting with paid subscriptions and referrals, is that your best subscribers, the ones who are most likely to refer, they will tend to be the people who are already supporting you with payment and already being a paid subscriber. And what's really interesting about people who are already paid subscribers, in most cases, is that once they've already agreed to start paying for a subscription, they don't see saving money on that subscription in the future as something that's particularly incentivizing, especially if your subscription's 10, 20, right, up to $50 a month. It's something they're happy to support you with. They don't actually want to save that money in the future. So what we tend to see working much better is, yes, it's great to say, okay, we'll make one referral and we'll give you a free trial month, for example, or we'll give you a $50 coupon off an annual subscription or something. That works nicely as sort of a less as a growth strategy, but more for the people who are sort of on the fence and they want an easy way to test out the paid version or the paid subscription, because the retention once they've tried out that month is going to be great. But in general, what you'll want to be working more towards on the rewards is, what's something we can give to our subscribers who are probably already paying, who are really our fans, that they'd be really excited by. So we're looking at exclusive access. Maybe if you publish things that are paywalled, maybe you can give top referrers earlier access. Maybe they can get tickets to conferences that you do, and if there's a conference that's coming up or an event, maybe they can be invited to a meet and greet before or afterwards. Maybe there's an extra bonus monthly state of sort of behind the scenes newsletter that they might be able to get. Often even swag and merchandise works well in that sort of scenario, because they want to be seen as a top supporter and they want to be supporting you. Or something else that we really like when it comes to referral rewards for paid subscriptions is sort of combining the reason for sharing with the reward. So to say, especially in like if you're in the B2B space, for example, you might say, well, come on, you know that your team should be reading this. You know there's 4 or 5 people who work with you who should also be reading. So share with those 5 people, and as a reward, we'll unlock a special team discount subscription for you, where your entire team can get access for this discounted price once you've invited them to the free version of the newsletter, for example. And that works really well because it gives them a reason to share with their existing team that isn't totally self-centered, so they're not profiting off their team and their friends signing up. But also it's a great sort of revenue driver as well, because it helps get that foot in the door for the paid subscriptions, which is nice on the team level.
That's really cool. One other thought I had too, which may be helpful, is if you're sharing into premium content, like for example, there's an article that's locked down, but you want to make sure that if you share the article, the receiver can actually read that. I know with our system you can set bypass rules, so if it's coming from email or something, it'll just send the person in and they'll be able to read full content. So would that be something you think would motivate the share and get the share numbers up in general?
I think that's definitely something you can use with the especially with the free subscribers who haven't upgraded to the paid subscription yet. I think that can be great. And that is one of the challenges when you run a paid subscription, is how do you take advantage of all of these free subscribers that you have who haven't upgraded to paid just yet, or maybe never will, but are still there and can still be valuable? How do you help them sort of help you as a business as well? So even though they may not be the ones who will make the most referrals, Just because there's so many of them in most cases compared to paid subscribers, they can still be very useful at driving growth as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Cool.
So, are you mainly in the? You mentioned a couple of celebrities, but it sounds as if a lot of your work is in the B2B space, driven by companies that might be able to put a dollar value on each subscriber and be very incentivized to maximize what they're getting out of their newsletters.
Definitely, yeah. I think people who are looking to us, they're not necessarily in the B2B space. I would say they're in, it's probably about a 40-60 split between B2B and consumer or prosumer. But I definitely think that what most of the people who are coming to us have in common is they view their newsletter as an essential part of a business strategy. So they have a value that they place on having subscribers and they want more of them. And they will be either monetizing them directly, maybe through advertising or subscription revenue, or maybe indirectly through products and services, and leveraging the size of their audience into book deals, into potentially, even Netflix series we've seen sometimes. If you have a very large social and email audience, you can use that to get all sorts of opportunities to sort of expand your career as well.
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time doing publishing work, and a lot of heard quite a few stories recently of people being judged on their audience base, on their newsletter subscriber base, on their social media followers. If their audience is not of a certain size, maybe they won't get that book deal. Maybe they won't get that Netflix deal.
Definitely.
So something like Sparkloop perhaps could be a useful tool. You need to drive your list up to a certain size, to have a certain audience size.
We really like it on the. Sorry.
You.
Well, I was just going to say very quickly, we like working with professional publishers and brands, because obviously they take a very business-oriented professional approach to it. But especially when it comes to the referral program side of things, it's much easier to get good results with a creator, an author, an artist, or a celebrity, because they have that personal connection and they're likely to be creating that kind of authentic personal newsletter content that people will want to share anyway. So those are definitely the ones that will find it easier to do very good referral programs and to grow via word of mouth, for sure.
Do they try and get people in their network that they know already? So, for example, if we were to do, say, WordPress-focused newsletters, I might talk to Pete and Lesley and get them to be part of my Sparkloop network. Or is Sparkloop actually providing those other newsletters? And if I go on Sparkloop, am I going to find other WordPress people to connect with and try and promote?
It's a really interesting point. So when it comes to the referral program itself, what we're talking about then mainly is incentivizing your existing newsletter audience to share with their friends, colleagues, and family, right? So it's not going outside of your existing newsletter. It's just finding the people who are inside your newsletter who are already reading and giving them an easy way to share with their friends. Now, what we also offer is another tool, which is called the Partner Network and Upscribe. And what you can do with that is exactly what you're describing, which is where you either partner up yourself with some other similar or creators or publishers with similar audiences, or you come to us and we connect you with those, and then you can either recommend each other to your audiences in sort of a cross-promotional sense, where it's a give and a take, and the net benefit is that everybody grows more quickly, or you can actually incentivize that with payments. So you might want to say, well, I know that because I have a really strong, let's say a really strong paid subscription offering or a really strong advertising offering in my newsletter, I know that a new subscriber on average is worth $5, for example. And what you can then do is say, okay, well, I know that Lesley's audience would be a really good fit for my newsletter. So if Lesley wants to recommend my newsletter to her audience, I'm very happy to pay her $2 per engaged subscriber she sends my way. And we just facilitate that and make that easy, both the matching and the tracking on both sides.
Oh, okay. So the bulk of your business is people leveraging their existing audience to drive more people to their own newsletter to increase their growth.
That was the bulk of it initially.
Okay,
Yes, we've now moved into more of the network effect side of things, where you're collaborating with other newsletters and other publishers to grow each other's audiences and earn revenue by doing so in some cases as well.
Yeah, how's that working? I mean, you got me thinking here with our own publisher base. They're always looking to grow the audience, and magazine publishers especially. Yeah, what is that? Are you seeing the sharing happening? Collaborating happening?
Oh, definitely, yes. I mean, so if we split this up into sort of the paid and the free recommendations, as we call them, we recommend doing both. So if you were to take, let's say, any publisher, any it can be paid or free, but ideally you'd be doing it to the free newsletter and then hoping to upgrade them later after you've nurtured them. Mm-hmm. So if you take a publication that you have and you ask them, well, what other publications do you also read? They shouldn't be competing, so it shouldn't be the case, I'll read this one or that one, but they should be, right. Have some sort of overlap. Right. And if you find 3 or 4 that are growing at a similar pace as yours, and you combine together into a sharing pod where you're each recommending each other, on average, you'll grow something like 2 or 3 times as quickly as you currently are. All of you will grow 2 or 3 times as quickly with really high, consistent audience quality. So it makes a huge difference. It's just the initial setup is the challenging part, because you have to agree with those other publishers to work together and to decide the ones which would be the best fit for you. But once you've done that, it's just, behind the scenes, just every subscriber you get and every subscriber they get becomes a subscriber for each other, and it's incredibly quick, sustainable growth.
I like that term, sharing pod. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a nice term. That's cool. I'm gonna noodle that a little bit. We might want to talk offline a little bit about helping our group of publishers get the word out too. We deal with a real wide variety, but getting them into your network would be a good move, I think. Helping them. Big fan of newsletter growth, newsletter strategy. Talk to Lesley. We talk pretty regularly, and she's got the most awesome WordPress newsletter solution on the planet. So yeah. I have a different question, more strategy oriented question. Can we shift gears a little bit?
Yeah,
it's actually Lesley's question.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of expand a little bit on the cross promotions, because we kind of covered it maybe a little bit superficially, but I think one thing, and maybe I spaced out, and it's possible that this was already covered, but I just wanted to say that with audiences, Pete, even with different publishers, I think even if you're a local newsroom, there is still some synergy to be had with publishers like a boat, publisher, or a tea publisher. That could still work even in partnership with a local newsroom, just because there are still some kind of interest overlaps. And I think that's kind of something to think about, that it's not just, my marketing newsletter can only be cross-promoted with other marketing newsletters. I think looking at it kind of demographically and interest-based is a better way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially if you're dealing with high-end tea, and maybe you're dealing with more of a metro area where there's a higher level of income. It would work. Yeah, I love the idea. I think it's fantastic.
So, Louis, you kind of position yourself as kind of an affiliate platform for newsletters, whereas a traditional kind of e-commerce affiliate platform would drive people to a checkout process, and maybe would have a separate dashboard to track all the links, to track all the rewards. Sparkloop basically positions itself as an affiliate program for newsletters. You provide a separate dashboard. People can track the links, track the money, the rewards they've earned. Is that right that you would go into a Sparkloop dashboard and you'd say, hey, I earned a new book, an event attendance, a t-shirt. You basically think of yourselves as an affiliate, almost exactly like an affiliate program, but for the newsletter ecosystem rather than e-commerce.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit confusing because we do have multiple different products, so it's not just the one. But what we call the referral side of things is it's very much a white labeled solution, right? So if you're seeing Sparkloop, you wouldn't know that it's us. You would just see, well, the newsletter that I read, the publisher I work with, the publishers whose newsletter I read, they have a referral program. I can refer 5 friends and win a t-shirt. And when they win the t-shirt, they'll get an email and there'll be a page they can go to put in their sizing and to see what they've won. It will be powered by Sparkloop, but they won't see the Sparkloop logo or anything. You know, they won't know about Sparkloop in most cases. It's all from the brand. Whereas the affiliate part of things, it is essentially an affiliate program, but for newsletter growth rather than for e-commerce or B2B sales, right? It's for acquiring subscribers. In that case, it very much is Sparkloop branded, and you would jump in there and you would see, okay, well, I'm a publisher, I'm part of the Sparkloop Partner Network. I've recommended 5 newsletters this month. Some of them I've recommended in my newsletter. Some of them I've recommended to new subscribers who've just signed up on my website. And I've made 1,000 referrals to those different newsletters in total. On average, I'm earning $2.50 per subscriber. So this month I've earned whatever it works out to be per subscriber or in total. Exactly.
So most of you say you mainly work with publishers that have an existing user base. They maybe need, say, 5,000, 10,000, just in order to have enough traction to start growing. And presumably they have a pretty clear idea of how much each subscriber is worth to them.
If you're going to be doing paid acquisition, then yes. So the ones who are paying will do. Exactly.
Okay. But some of them maybe don't quite have that data, and then they try different rewards, free books, free things that don't cost them so much money.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So if you're doing the referral program rather than the paid partner programs, if you're just giving your existing audience rewards, in that case, you want to have ideally an existing audience already in place, because you need to have a group of existing subscribers who can go out and refer, right? Because you're going to see, very, very best case, 10 to 15% of your existing audience will try and recommend and try and refer to their friends. So if you don't have a couple of hundred subscribers at least, we're talking about 3 or 4 people, at which point it isn't worth setting it up. So in the very, very early stages, if you don't have an idea of the lifetime value of a subscriber, or if you don't have a large audience, you do want to start thinking about what I call growth loops, which is referral programs, SEO, things like that. But you also have to be doing some other things to sort of more directly acquire subscribers, which will be less effective over time, percentage-wise, but that just have a bigger effect in absolute numbers, right? That can bring in 100 subscribers today, whereas a referral program, if you only have 100 subscribers, it's probably going to bring in maybe 5 or 10 new subscribers a month.
We've talked quite generally. Do you have any kind of examples of people that have used Sparkloop really well? Where
yes,
the reward has really been a good match for the audience?
Definitely. So if we're talking about referral rewards, some of my favorites have been just really weird and unique rewards that wouldn't work for anybody else. And that's one of the key mistakes that people make when they start coming up with their referral program, is they look at what others are doing and they try and copy them. And that almost never works. So I think an example that I really like is a personal newsletter actually by a someone who works in tech in San Francisco, and they write a weekly personal newsletter. Mainly it's for sort of like growing their own network purposes. That is the main reason they do it. And they use this with the referral program, and they said, share this with your friends, colleagues, whoever you think would be interested in tech updates. And if you make 2,000 referrals, I'll buy a billboard in San Francisco, and I'll put whatever you want on that billboard for a month. And it'll go up there and you can have it. And people loved that. Obviously, nobody actually managed to do it. They had a few that got quite close. They had a few that did do 1,000+ referrals, but nobody quite managed it.
Oh,
But
wow.
they loved the idea of being the one who would get that billboard and, get whatever they wanted on it. So that one worked really, really well. Yeah. Another
and you
one,
didn't have to
maybe
pay the money
less.
in the end either, so win-win.
No, exactly. Yeah, no money spent in the end. The other one that worked really well, and just to give you an idea, so we worked with an author who I don't have permission to name them directly, but they wrote a very famous best-selling book about a very short work week, basically. So that might give you an idea of who it is. Just a couple of hours a week, basically, was the work. And because their audience was so big, right? They had millions and millions of subscribers. I think something like 2.5 million subscribers when we started working with them already. They had all kinds of advertisers who wanted to advertise in the newsletter, so they could get any rewards and prizes they wanted for free from advertisers. And they did a big referral giveaway with us for, I think it was 8 sleep mattresses. So these super expensive, they cost a couple of $1,000s each, these tech mattresses. And they gave away 20 of them to people who made referrals. And it worked fine. Nothing special, just the numbers were big because he had 2.5 million subscribers already. So the numbers were always going to be big. So it worked fine, but it wasn't particularly good. And we redid it a month or two later. But instead of having this fancy, really expensive prize, we just said, okay, make referrals this week, and we're going to pick 50 people at random, and we'll send you a copy of a chapter that was removed from the book. So a chapter that the publishers said, actually, we don't think this should be included. We don't want it to go in. No one's ever read it. And he sent that out to his audience, and he got something like 20 or 30 times as many referrals from that than from this expensive mattress giveaway. So everybody gravitates straight to wanting to do expensive things and valuable things in monetary terms, but it's the personal connection, the unique sort of exclusivity of the reward that's most important, nearly all the time.
That's cool. Yeah, it makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and
I
probably
love
much
that
more
story.
on brand as well, because Mr. X hours work week isn't associated with mattresses at all. That's not nothing related to his personal brand at all. Whereas a chapter from the book is much more relatable, I guess, and you probably think you have a much better chance of winning it too.
Potentially, yeah. I think it's just you have a lot of people who they're not incentivized by monetary things because they could buy those things. They want the things that money can't buy them, the things that have the fun story attached to them. The experience, I think, is the important thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
So one of the things missing from learning about Sparkloop is kind of more old-fashioned advertising. That's not something you do at the moment, right? It's not. You don't directly help people sell advertising in their newsletters. It's more of more growth than monetization at the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. There are a couple of really great partners that we have worked with in the past who do advertising sales on behalf of newsletters. It's a really specialized thing to get into. It's often much more effective if it's the team behind the newsletter who are doing it themselves. So it's not something that we really do ourselves at all. But it's it's a tricky game, and it's not something that we do ourselves.
Well, you got your focus. That's good. That's good. Can I answer? Can I want to talk about one of Lesley's questions. if we can I shift gears now? Is that okay, Lesley?
Yes, let's shift
This-
gears.
So we Lesley brainstormed some questions for you, more questions than we have time to answer. But Lesley posed a question. I'm just reading it here. Chicken or egg? Should we focus on revenue or growth first? I want to frame this a little bit from my perspective, if I may. So, we have this framework where we encourage publishers to set up a free registration, right, in exchange for a little extra content to grow their audience, and it works incredibly well. It's just a home run. What's surprising is that it requires some education to get publishers across the line with this, because most publishers are still not doing it. But when they do it, we see their email lists really grow. Big question we get with many of our new publisher customers is, should we just start with a free registration, right? Should we just and like the question for you is, should we really focus on growing the list and then introduce subscriptions later, or do we do it simultaneously? So we have the free registration, and then we have that sort of over time nurturing to target and convert the paid subscriber. I'd love to hear if you have any experience with that or any thoughts in that department. I mean, from my point of view, you got to grow the list. That's just priority one. But do you do priority two, which is a real big priority, at the same time you do priority one, if you're really going after audience growth? I mean, let's say the main goal is audience growth right now. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's one of those really interesting things where every month or two, there's someone publishes a case study about how they've done the one, and everyone says, see, that's the answer. And then a month or two later, someone does the other, and everyone goes, yep, that's the right way of doing it. And it just cycles back and forth. And obviously, both can work. The way that I like to think about it is, I think there are really... The answer is obviously that it depends, right? And what it depends on is how much it costs you to acquire new subscribers, I think. Because if you know how much it costs to acquire a new subscriber, that puts a limit on how quickly you can grow, because it puts a limit on your budget. So the numbers I'm looking at are, what's your total lifetime value of a subscriber? And it's nice and simple if you are only monetizing through paid subscriptions, because you're just saying, well, when I get a new subscriber who signs up, whether they sign up free or paid, over their lifetime on average, how much are they going to pay in subscription revenue? So we know theoretically what the most is that we could ever spend on acquiring that subscriber. But that's actually not very useful for growth, because in most cases, unless they're paying annual or lifetime immediately up front, most of that revenue is going to come later. So unless you have a huge war chest of potential budget that you can spend on acquisition, you're going to run out of money very quickly, even though the subscribers will become profitable at some point in the future. So you have to look at the payback period. You have to look and say, well, how much revenue can I make from those subscribers within the first day, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, and so on? And how can I maximize that number, even at the expense of maybe reducing the value of the subscriber all time, just so that I can be more aggressive in growth? Because if you're normally, if you know that a subscriber is worth $50 on average over their lifetime, but that you only make $1 from them in the first month, that's going to make it very, very difficult to grow that business into a sizable newsletter business.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can make some tweaks to that, such that you're being very aggressive with annual upgrades up front, asking people to do 3 months rather than monthly, things like that, you can change that so that, yes, okay, that subscriber is now only worth $30 or $40 on average, but I'm making $3 or $4 in the first month, which means I can spend 4 times as much on growth to acquire that subscriber and still be more profitable over the medium term, right? So I can grow 4 times as quickly, if not faster. And those are the numbers that I'm really thinking about. So I think when it comes to, should you focus on monetization or growth, I really think it comes down to, you have to dial your monetization in the first month in to where it's strong enough to be able to focus on growth, basically, right? Because if your monetization in the first month or two is so weak that you can't invest in growth to a reasonable level, then probably the biggest lever for your growth is going to be fixing the monetization in the first 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's monetization. That's a good question. You know, with the advent of free registration, it sort of takes the place of the free trial in a way, in that nurture. And when people are ready to convert, we're always telling our publishers, get that annual fee in, right? Just annual recurring. You know, you get that lump sum up front. They've already tried you for a period of time. And when they're ready to go, it's usually trying for a year. You know what I mean? And you're not with B2C. I mean, you're not charging $1,000 a month. You're charging, you know, whatever, $50, $29 for the year, whatever, you know, something like that. Maybe upwards of $99. So you might as well take the money up front. Yeah. It does depend. Magazine publishers, you know, which I learned recently at the niche conference, they're interested in growth, period. Like they are all about audience growth because they want to please their advertisers. They're not about pleasing readers. They're not about, you know.
That's pretty harsh.
10% of the room I was in, huh?
That's pretty harsh, there, Pete.
Oh, well, I was in the room. I mean, you know, I did a presentation on subscriptions down there, and 10% of the room raised their hand when I asked them about, you know, are they charging or planning on charging for subscriptions? And they're you know, we work with a lot of magazine advertisers that or publishers that are doing it, but for the most part, in that conference, I mean, no, they're interested in ad sales revenue because ad sales revenue today brings in more revenue than what they think is reader revenue, right? News sites are totally different. They're all about reader revenue, generally speaking. You know, I mean, they want ad revenue too, but the ad revenue has been sliding for everybody. So reader revenues. Now, those magazine publishers, they're changing. Like they're coming across the line and they're changing their attitudes. But they are supremely interested in audience growth because then they can get more sponsors to their newsletters. They get more sponsors to their events. They can promote the events. You know, that's really what they care about. And you know, I get it. So I mean, I'd say, Louis, you know, going after the magazine, you know, the traditional print magazine world that's stepping into digital, that's going to be a good market for you. Yeah. So.
Awesome.
All right. Cool.
Well, Pete, your attitude has always been that that newsletters are the lifeblood of publishers. That it's a big publisher mistake to put up a hard paywall and just say your choices are join our paid subscription service or go away, and that's a terrible mistake. And that newsletters should be a soft third option. That newsletters or newspapers, should be trying to push a big proportion of their audience into their newsletter, to work with them over time, to soft sell them over, and maybe even use like a referral system to try and grow their newsletter and turn that initial subscriber into more.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we push free registrations because it introduces just a little bit of friction, but they get benefits. So you tend to have a better list that way, and then they're logged in. You get to track, you know, what they're doing on the site, and there are lots of other benefits. It also reduces the friction of checking out. So when I'm ready to check out, like the way we set it up, it's like, well, your data's already there. Just throw your credit card in, and so it's an easy checkout. And you get more sponsors, but the bottom line is, Steve, is exactly what what you're referring to is that you need to give readers a seamless, comfortable, nurturing, friendly experience and that's where going through that, metered paywall, get a few articles, okay, register and you'll get more stuff, including the free newsletter, which is like of high value. And because that means you're gonna get the gist of the content every month or day or whatever your thing is, and you're nurturing, you're taking care of readers over time. And I think we all see the crap that we run into on news sites and magazine sites or whatever websites that have not only like paywall pop-ups that say, "Hey, pay now," which nobody's ready to pay now, at least not the casual readers. And then you get the browser notifications and the ad slide-ins and the video auto plays and all that junk. And what I see is publishers they're still at that kitchen sink stage where they're just kind of throwing everything on their website, kind of, okay, well, what's going to work? And advertising is kind of like the low bar, the network ad, right? And then they're starting to realize now, hey, this isn't really working. So we got to look at reader revenue. We got to look at sponsorships or events or other things. And no one says no to audience growth. Like that seems to be a good spot. Everybody wants to grow their audience. Anyway, I
Pete,
think
what are you seeing? What are you seeing right now in terms of revenue with your publishers? Like, is there more from like the revenue split between advertising and subscriptions?
It's hard to answer because every publisher is just so darn different. Some publishers have zero advertising. They're philosophically opposed to it. Their subject matter, maybe it's like a medical publisher or something like that. They're not interested in advertising. They're all about reader revenue. We have a cancer information publisher that's like that. They might find a sponsor for their newsletter. Like that might be a way for them to go. They're not really interested in injecting advertising. But then we have other publishers like B2C sports magazine, right? And they're all about advertising for sure. They're all about reader revenue too. They're all about everything. I know the publisher. He's very well. He's absolutely hell bent on lifting every stone around him to find money. So, originally, and it is about digital subscriptions for him. I mean, he's got the advertising. He's got a system. He prints. He's got a successful publication going, but he wants that digital revenue to come in. And I'm trying to walk him across the free registration line because he hasn't done that yet, and he wants to do it, but he's just so damn busy he hasn't gotten around to it. But anyway, I don't know if that answers the question, but it's every publisher is different, audience is different, content's different, philosophy is different. It really requires a conversation and I think really a strategic conversation with each publisher. So.
Hey, Louis, are you a writer yourself? Do you have is there a Sparkloop or a Louis newsletter?
There isn't
Louis
a Louis
newsletter.
there should be. Yeah, it's one I've wanted to do for a while, but I never have time, and I always think on my weekends I have something better to do. I want to go outside and leave the computer behind. We have a newsletter at Sparkloop that I write weekly, which is called Send and Grow, and it's about the newsletter industry and updates and tips on what seems to be working, growth and monetization wise, which is really fun to write because it comes so naturally because I spend the week just talking to people and finding out the interesting things they're doing, and then I get to write about it, and it makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about when it's really just me listening to everyone else tell me what they're doing. So it's easy and fun and seems to work.
Where can people get your newsletter?
Well, if they go to sparkloop.app.
Could you send a referral link?
We do have a referral link, yes. If it's sparkloop.app/newsletter, and I can put the referral link in. I think if you make if 8 people sign up from it, then I will get a free Sparkloop mug. So that will be fun for me.
That's cool.
I tell it. Sparkloop is a British company.
We are,
Do-
yes,
I'm
officially.
thinking if one of us is going to. Okay, I'm thinking if one of us is going to try and get a Sparkloop mug from referrals from this, then one of us would need to be in the UK. So
well,
if
luckily our fulfillment
Sparkloop's own
partnerships
newsletter.
ships worldwide, so we're okay.
Okay, all right, Lesley, maybe you can sign up and and if we can get
I'll
people
sign up
signing
8
up for the
times with the
Sparkloop.
most spammy emails possible.
We'll catch it. Don't worry. We've had a
I think
lot
you've
of
got
people
a
try
spam
that.
detection
Is
system
it-
for that, probably. Yeah.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about that actually, like, because surely that's like, as you just said, a major issue. How do you catch like all Lesley, Lesley, Leslie, Lesles? Like, how do you catch that stuff?
It's one of those things where you just have to. You start with what you think makes sense, and then over time you have developers on your team who just constantly keep updating it based on how you're discovering people are cheating. So it's one of those really annoying things when you start the business, because you have to spend so much time looking at all the ways that people do cheat and figuring out how to stop it, or at least stop enough of it. And it then becomes, after 2 or 3 years, something that you really love, because it means that if anyone else wants to compete with you, they've got to go through those 2 or 3 years of hell first to do so. So it's one of those things that is horrible until it's done, and then you're really glad that people are like that. So, but the answer is, I mean, there's all sorts of different things you can do. We don't explain most of them because it gives anyone who wants to go through the, to get past it, a blueprint for how to do it.
Yeah, fair enough.
In general, you won't have that. I mean, if you are having
Damn it,
that
no
issue,
free mug for me.
well, we're happy to send you one. We can make an exception. But it's it's the best problem you can have. If your rewards are enticing enough that people are actually trying to figure out ways to sign up for new email addresses and create Gmail accounts and stuff, and spend hours, maybe even hacking together a script just to try and win one of your rewards. I mean, you've done a really good job with your rewards, and you're going to be getting great growth from genuine referrals too. So it's one of the things we say is, that's a really good sign that you're on the right track, is if you're seeing people trying to cheat.
Interesting.
Time is a great penalty. I think it's the penalty in our society. It's like if something takes time to get around a system, for me, that's okay by me. Like, okay, you're going to spend the time, great. We're not, go for it. Because your best customers are going to be, customers are going to be the ones that they're not going to be bothered. They just they want things to work, and they're willing to pay for it. But they're trying to get around the system. They're not going to be a customer, at least in our case. Cool.
So I think we should start to wrap up. But before that, Louis, I just kind of wanted to ask you what your best advice is for growing a newsletter. And I know that's like very vague, but maybe if you could talk us through, when a new potential customer comes on a call, and you're like, I'm sure you have some kind of like mental checklist, like, what are the best things that they can do based on their circumstances? Could you just kind of take us through that so that we can all steal this mental checklist from you and apply it to our own newsletters?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to do that. So most of my time on calls is spent convincing people that they're not quite ready for Sparkloop yet, or that they should be doing something else first, so that they can get the benefits from it. Unfortunately, that tends to be how it goes. We're a very aspirational product, obviously, for a lot of smaller.
And that just kind of comes back to that revenue versus growth, right?
It does, yeah, it does. Very often.
Could you take 30 seconds quickly Could you quickly expand on that? Why are you telling people no? Why are they not ready for a program like this?
Yeah, it might be they're not publishing consistently enough yet, for example. It might be that they haven't quite nailed the audience content fit, so That's a nice way of saying just maybe the newsletter they're writing just isn't really good enough to be recommended, even if you have, really, really good rewards. There's no sort of reward that will make you recommend something that you actually don't like publicly, or that isn't quite good enough. And every publisher obviously thinks that their newsletter is really good and that it gets really good. It's being read and people love it. The numbers of organic sharing that they have very often tells a different story. So we try and break that gently and just say, look, there's some other things we want to fix here first. And in the more traditional publishing space, what you tend to find is that people are getting subscribers through pop-ups, through advertising, through all sorts of different sources, but that they actually don't really have anywhere on their website that would convince a referred person to sign up to the newsletter. They won't have a really good sort of optimized landing page yet that works with a welcome sequence that makes sense in the context of, oh, I think you should go and sign up for this. So that's a common one. They'll have some sort of just basic form that hasn't been, it's functional, it works, but it's definitely not going to convince anyone who's clicked on a link out of curiosity to sign up. So those are all some of the things that we see as reasons to maybe take another look at this in the future. But coming back to Lesley, to your original question of sort of how we would start thinking about growth for someone, really it does depend on the stage that they're at. And the first place that we look at is really just what is the acceptable cost of acquisition of a subscriber that they can get to. Do they know it? And if they know it, is it high or low? And if it's low, we say, obviously, look, us trying to help you figure out how to acquire new subscribers for 50 cents, it's doable, but you're choosing to play a really hard game. It's going to be way easier for you to figure out how to make it acceptable to you to pay $2 a subscriber, and then come back and grow at that point, rather than trying to play a really, really tough game. If they're at a point where their subscriber acquisition costs are acceptable and pretty decent and competitive, and they have some playroom to do some fun stuff, then really we take sort of we split into sort of three approaches. So we look at how they're doing in terms of trading their time for growth. We look at what they're doing in terms of trading their revenue or their budget cash for growth. And we look at what they're doing in terms of investing in flywheels and growth loops for the future. So in the very early stages, you just need to get the momentum rolling. And especially if you're cash strapped, then we're looking at just investing your time straight into growth, right? So we're doing things like going where your audience hangs out, asking people to subscribe, figuring out how to do cross promotions and newsletter swaps with other similar newsletters, and just spending your day basically doing things that aren't going to scale and aren't going to be working past 10,000 subscribers. As you start to get to that point, you have a little bit more budget available, you can start investing money into growth directly, right? So you can start paying, let's say, $3 or $2 a subscriber to Facebook, for example, or on other ad platforms, maybe through Sparkloop. And those can scale to a certain point, but you're always then still going to be paying $2 for that subscriber, right? You have to, if you want to then keep growing, you have to keep spending more and more, even though you're spending the same amount per subscriber. So at some point, if you want to be one of those newsletters that does grow really big, and we're talking 6 or 7 figure newsletters, at that point you have to have some sort of growth loop, some sort of unfair advantage. And that could be that the owner of your publication has a Twitter or an Instagram account with 50 million followers, in which case you don't need to worry about growth. It's going to happen for you, right? But for most of us, it comes down to, can I build up SEO? Can I build a referral program into it for the word of mouth? What can I do that will scale with my audience? Because a referral program, if you can get 10% of your audience to share with 3 people, when you have 100 subscribers, it's not worth doing. When you have 1,000 subscribers, not really going to be doing too much. When you have 100,000 subscribers, that's going to be the most significant acquisition source that you have, and it's going to be the thing that differentiates you from the others that reach that growth peak where they can't grow anymore because they're losing so many subscribers each send that they can't physically get enough subscribers to keep growing. And the unfortunate thing is that you can't grow a list with paid acquisition to 100,000 subscribers and then suddenly plonk in a referral program and expect it to work the next day. You have to get your audience to you have to get them sort of acclimatized to it. You have to figure out the right rewards. You have to build that sort of culture of sharing where they want to do that, where it's part of being in the newsletter, part of being in the community. So you have a much better chance of doing that if you start earlier at 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 subscribers as you grow, because by the time you really need it, it will then be there and working for you. Same with SEO, right? You can't expect to turn on SEO at 100,000 subscribers. It's something that you've had to lay the groundwork for years.
So if there's a publisher that has maybe 5,000 to 10,000 current subscribers, and they're putting out a decent newsletter every week or whatever their cycle is, but they're not spending money on Facebook acquisition or anything like that at this point. They're really in our case, they're building their list through free registration and sort of organically. Would Sparkloop, would that work for them? Would that be a good publisher use case?
If they have the
Or
goal
are you
of growing,
looking for publishers that are like I'm just trying to think like a typical consumer magazine, maybe they or digital publication. They're charging $29 a year. They have let's say they have 10,000 subscribers. They have a conversion rate. Their free registrations converted about 10% of their free registrations become paid subscribers. I think your base plan is $99 a month, right? For someone like that would start up. Does that sound about right? And could they plug Sparkloop into their newsletter and start enjoying referral benefits, you think? Or is there anything else that they need to do?
I think they definitely could. On the referral side, for sure. I think they should be probably doing two other things first. I think the first thing they should be doing is plugging in, becoming what we call a partner who recommends other non-competing newsletters. Because if you're, like, very simple math, $29 a year, let's say that works out at like sort of $40 lifetime value per subscriber, because some will stay longer than a year, some won't stay for the full year. So let's say $40 just on the safe side, 10% conversion rate. Each subscriber is worth $4 on average that you acquire. If you recommend other newsletters to new subscribers who sign up to your publication when they opt into the free thing, just add in that extra step where you recommend 2 or 3 non-competing but interesting newsletters. You've just changed that number from $4 per subscriber to something like $7 to $8 per subscriber. You've effectively doubled the value of each subscriber you have just by adding that one little extra step in. So if you're getting 100 subscribers a month, 100 new ones, that's, you've just doubled your extra revenue each month from 400 to 800. From 400 to 800, right? So that's the first thing that I would be doing, because you can then invest that money straight back into some other paid acquisition source, so that all of a sudden you're getting 1,000 subscribers a month rather than the 100 that you were getting before. And the second thing that I'd do is, if you have a paid subscription, I would be using our partner program rather than the referral program. And I would be saying, well, anyone who wants to can recommend our publication, and you can recommend the free version, and we will pay $10 per new subscriber that you send to us, but only if they upgrade to a paid subscription within the first 30 days, for example. And that way you have risk-free growth on that side. So those are the two things I'd be looking at first. And a referral program can't hurt, but it's the thing that takes more work. It takes more skill to do that, because you have to come up with the rewards and understand what your audience would like. Whereas recommending other newsletters or paying people to recommend your newsletter, that's not particular. I mean, it's work, but it's nowhere near the same level of sort of marketing knowledge needed.
Do you find if a publisher recommends other newsletters, then other publishers are willing to recommend their newsletter? Is it like okay, I'll be generous first, and then other publishers are generous back? Is that kind of the way it works?
On the free side of things, yes. If you're putting together a group of free newsletters, that tends to work, and it tends to work best when you're recommending other newsletters and other publishers that you have a personal relationship of some kind with anyway, because you'll have that audience overlap and it will be a great fit. And that side of things can definitely work well. On the paid side, it tends to be the case that you don't need to necessarily, both be recommending each other paid at that point. There's no point doing that. I mean, we're very happy to do that because we take a small commission on it. So please go ahead and do it. But you probably, be better off doing it free for each other and helping each other grow without having to spend on it.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Yeah. So let's wrap things up. Thanks so much, Louis, for coming on the show. I think we've all learnt a lot, and so the cool thing is that like we're all kind of business owners, and I feel like both like Pete and Steve are going to take away the stuff and apply it to their own customers, which I'm really excited to see in the future how that all pans out.
Now I think about it, I feel like I probably see Sparkloop a couple of times a week in different newsletters. I know I'll be on the lookout. I'll be on the lookout for it now.
I'm going to look at my newsletters and be like, oh, that's
That's Louis.
That's what that is.
Yeah, there's Louis' newsletter.
Exactly.
Louis letter.
Unfortunately, they don't include a photo of me in the referral section. I've been trying to get that put in, but people keep saying they won't keep paying.
They
if
should.
That's there. So yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, Louis, thanks so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks all for
We'll
having
make
me. It's
this
been great.
recording available
Really exciting.
as well. Yeah, good stuff. You'll probably see an email from me offline. We can connect.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Always happy to talk newsletters and publishing. Thanks everyone for having me. It's been amazing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Louis.
All right, guys. Thank you. See ya.